Hey everyone! About a week ago, the Supreme Court struck down many of the tariffs imposed by President Trump using the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. The Supreme Court basically said that tariffs were outside the scope of that federal law, which has historically been used to apply trade sanctions. One of the underlying factors was that tariffs are really just a tax on U.S. citizens, not a direct means of regulating imports and exports with a foreign country, and only Congress has the authority to tax U.S. citizens. So that Supreme Court ruling invalidated many, but not all, of the tariffs President Trump put in place last year. Prior to the implementation of the Liberation Day tariffs, the net effective tariff rate on goods coming to the U.S. was about 2.4%. Over the course of 2025, tariffs on different countries and different products were raised and lowered, but at the end of the year, the effective tariff rate was about 16%. After the Supreme Court struck down the IEEPA tariffs on February 20th, the effective tariff rate fell by about 7 percentage points. But that only lasted for a few days, as President Trump used a different law to enact 10% global tariffs effective on February 24th. That raises the effective tariff rate back up to about 12.2%. Now, I should also point out that the president has stated that he's going to increase the global tariff rate to 15% in the near future, and that would take the overall effective tariff rate to about 13.7%. But these new tariffs are only in place for 150 days, then they expire unless Congress extends them. That said, the Trump administration has indicated they plan to invoke tariffs using different legal rules later this year. Despite all these different rulings and changes, some tariffs were not affected. The tariffs on steel, aluminum, and semi-finished copper remain at 50%, and the effective tariff on softwood lumber from Canada remains at 45%. Many of the goods imported from two of America's largest trading partners, Canada and Mexico, have zero tariffs, as they fall under a different trade agreement, the USMCA. But that trade agreement is up for renewal in July, so we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. Now, there's a lot more details on the tariffs, but I want to focus on how these changes affect commercial real estate. And while the tariffs increase construction costs, squeeze household balance sheets, and weigh on retail sales, the real impact, in my opinion, comes indirectly, through elevated uncertainty. In many ways, these effects are more significant than the actual financial impact of tariffs. The erratic trade and tariff policies create uncertainty, which affects business and consumer behavior. Businesses have pulled back on hiring. Job creation in 2025 was 88% lower than 2024. From May 2025, after the Liberation Day tariffs were announced, through the end of last year, the U.S. created an average of just 1,500 jobs per month. And while there are other forces in play, uncertainty and caution were likely the greatest contributors to the slowdown in hiring. And the slowing pace of job creation is weighing on household formation, which reduces apartment demand. In the second half of 2025, apartment absorption tumbled, dipping into negative territory in the fourth quarter. In addition, weaker job creation and household formation can restrain spending. On an inflation-adjusted basis, core retail sales only grew by 0.4% year over year in December of 2025. That in turn could ultimately restrain the demand for retail space and industrial space. Now, although the tariff policy has been disruptive and created uncertainty, resulting in slower job creation, we have to remember that the U.S. economy is enormous and it continues to grow. Despite tariffs weighing on GDP growth last year, the economy still grew by 2.2%. And even though hiring has slowed dramatically, it remains positive. As a result, demand for the four main commercial real estate property types is forecast to slow, but remain positive. And the silver lining of the tariffs for commercial real estate investors is that they will continue to drive up construction costs and restrain the new supply pipeline. So even though space demand will likely be weaker than before the tariffs were implemented, the supply pipeline will also shrink, and vacancy rates are expected to remain relatively stable. Then ultimately, as uncertainty wanes, and it always comes back down, space demand could revive and commercial real estate fundamentals could strengthen rapidly. And that is the opportunity to consider for investors who keep their eyes on the horizon.